Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, if anyone has a technical issue, please email us at webinars@wagnerlawgroup.com. Webinars is Webinars. So my name is David Gabor. I'm a partner with the Wagner Law Group, and I head the employment law and HR teams. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Josh Cook, a cybersecurity attorney and truly a guru in his field. He leads the Wagner Law Group's new cybersecurity and privacy practice, and I am privileged today to have a chance to interview Josh so that you all get a chance to get to know him. So, Josh, can you share a bit about your professional background and what led you to specialize in cybersecurity and privacy law?
Sure. So I've been practicing for about 20 years, a little over 20 years here. And I started out in business litigation, securities litigation, both plaintiff and defense in the broker-dealer and investment advisor world. From there, I moved in-house at John Hancock. I was there for 12 years and um, handling regulatory defense, complex investigations, customer complaints, and anti-fraud. There's a whole lot of anti-fraud kind of throughout my career. And at some point, John Hancock sold my primary client, and I transitioned to become the first cyber counsel for Manulife. Manulife is the parent company of John Hancock. And from there, I was responsible for cybersecurity globally for Manulife from a legal perspective and brand protection globally. And I also had US privacy and the US Intellectual Property Office. And it all kind of dovetailed around cybersecurity. So since leaving there, or I guess when I left there, I sat down and I wrote a book called Cyber Resilience by Design: The Executive's Guide to Managing a Cyber Attack. And I set about starting my own practice to bring my multinational, multi-billion dollar enterprise experience to much smaller organizations that maybe don't have the resources for someone like me full time, but could certainly benefit from the expertise and the knowledge I can bring and the risk mitigation I can help them with. So that's really me in a nutshell.
Gotcha. So, Cyber Resilience by Design, the Executive's Guide to Managing a Cyber Attack. I think it's a good read. So, I am so thrilled that you're with the Law Group, but what drew you to join our firm, and what's exciting to you about leading our new department?
Yeah, I've been familiar with the Wagner Law Group's reputation for quite a while, and while I was with Hancock, one of the things that I was doing there was supporting the John Hancock retirement team, and I saw firsthand the the risks that retirement business lines have experienced when it deals when it comes to cybersecurity and privacy. And so there's a whole lot of overlap and alignment between the Wagner Law Group and the practice that I'm building. So I kind of felt like it was a great opportunity to join forces and bring my expertise to a whole new set of businesses.
Okay. You've shared with me a couple of the impactful projects you've worked on during your career. Maybe you can share that with our audience, some impactful projects, successes you've worked on that would be important for people to know about.
Yeah, there was actually one in particular in 2020. And as sure everyone's familiar, a lot of people were working from home with COVID, and this was very soon after Bitcoin had gained a lot of popularity, and so there was an explosion of ransomware across the world, and it seemed like every day there was a new article about a different threat actor deploying ransomware on a different company. And so I realized that it was just a matter of time before it hit my client. And so I sat down and I wrote out a playbook for the executives to understand, what ransomware actually meant to them, what sorts of questions they were going to have to deal with, and giving them an opportunity to think them through when they were not under pressure. Because if you're thinking those things through, while the ransomware is deployed on your system, you maybe don't end up with the best decision at the end of that. Now, the technical people had a plan in place already, right? They understood what the threat was, they understood what was going to happen and how to deal with it. But there was a real disconnect as you moved up the food chain to the C-suite and the board, where they just didn't fully understand what it meant, and the implications that it would have to the company and to the clients. So I developed that playbook to give them that understanding, to really empower them to be able to make confident decisions in the moment. And as luck would have it, I really couldn't have timed it better if I had actually been the one deploying ransomware myself. But about 3 weeks after I had run the C-suite and the board through that playbook, we had our first event. And of course, it was at a vendor, because that's typically what happens, especially with a large organization. The vendors are the weak point in the defenses. So, there was a ransomware event with a vendor. It had some pretty large downstream impacts for the company, but we were ready for it. And that was really an eye opener for me, that, getting ready means not just, having a plan in place, having something written down, but it means everyone understanding what their role really is, so that they can actually, take the reins in the moment and do the best job that they can do.
Wow, it's a heck of a story. So let's pivot over to the importance of cybersecurity and privacy. Why is cybersecurity and privacy law so critical for businesses today, and particularly for clients of the Wagner Law Group?
Yeah, cybersecurity and privacy are cost centers. And every business is trying to minimize their cost centers and maximize their profit centers. But cyber and privacy are unique among cost centers in that they really form the foundation of trust that the business relies on in all of its relationships, whether it's with customers, with employees, with regulators. That foundation of trust is essential, and privacy and cybersecurity are really integral to that foundation. You know, cyber attacks are incredibly cheap to pull off, and the impacts can be devastating. They can even be existential to companies. Smaller companies really have a hard time handling cyber attacks and weathering that storm. And really, being ready is the difference maker. If you're ready for an attack, then you can probably get through it, and you may end up emerging stronger on the other side of it. And if you're not ready, it's kind of like taking an exam in school. If you don't study, you might pass, but you can really improve your odds a lot if you put the effort in advance.
Great way to put it. So, Josh, what are some of the trends or challenges in cybersecurity and privacy that you all should be aware of?
Yeah, and there's first I'll say business email compromise. It is shocking how easy it is for bad guys to get into enterprise email systems. It happens all the time, and you can see, it happens in every single state. It happens in every single country. It results in a massive amount of losses, whether it's bad guys interjecting themselves into an email thread that's already existing, or they use an email account to spread phishing emails around to all of your contacts. It happens all the time, and it is, like I said, shockingly easy for bad guys to pull off. Um, another, I mentioned phishing, and phishing is ubiquitous. And the reason why it's ubiquitous is because it is incredibly cheap and it works. For a couple $100, a threat actor can send out a phishing email to 100,000 people. If they get a fraction of a percent response, that's still dozens of people whose credentials they've compromised, and they can wreak havoc with that. Or they can sell those credentials and make a profit, in very short order. So, phishing works, and there's really it's really hard to defend against that because we're humans. We make mistakes and we fall for things that we shouldn't fall for. And phishing, we kind of expect it over email. At this point, the bad guys are using texting for, or, SMS phishing, smishing. They'll call you up, impersonating someone. And that's a vishing, a voice phishing attack. For if they are targeting you in particular, that'll be spear phishing. They've got someone in mind that they want to take advantage of. And if you're a particularly well-connected person or a high net worth individual or a senior executive of a company, they'd go after you, and that would be called whaling, because in the cyber industry we love having all sorts of fun terms for everything. Um, and I mentioned ransomware earlier. That is still a big threat. It's still a problem. But there's an emerging threat that I wanted to mention too, and that is remote offshore workers. And in particular, there's a group out of North Korea, state-sponsored group out of North Korea, that has been basically applying for jobs, pretending to be not in North Korea, applying for jobs, usually IT jobs, for companies based out of the US or in Europe. And then when they get that job, they will actually, work that job remotely. They'll be in North Korea, but the laptop that the company ships out to them will be in, a server farm in the Philippines or India or somewhere else. The North Korean will access it through there, and they'll do the job for a while. But what they're really doing is a couple of things. They're collecting a paycheck, which could lead the company to run the risk of being sanctioned by the Office of Foreign Assets Control. But they're also understanding how to exploit the environment because they've got insider access now. So it is an emerging threat. It's something that companies really need to pay attention to, especially if they are routinely hiring offshore remote workers. And that it's kind of a scary world out there.
That it is. Ay, ay, ay. So I've heard about GDPR and CCPA, and also some emerging state level privacy laws. How do those impact businesses?
Yeah, it there is a patchwork of regulation out there, that is really complicated for businesses to navigate. In the U.S., there is no comprehensive federal privacy legislation, so we're really left to the 50 states and other territorial jurisdictions, to try to figure out what applies to us and when and under what circumstances and how do we respond to it. CCPA is the law in California. Most businesses have at least some connection to California as they're doing business. So that governs a lot of the way businesses interact with data. And if you're collecting any information on European residents, you're subject to GDPR. So it can be really complicated. And on top of that is layered the industry regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley and other regulations that cover specific industries. And then on top of that, you have the SEC regulations relating to public companies, and in particular the reporting requirements that the SEC has had in place for about a year now, which are really challenging for companies because all jurisdictions have been really compressing that notification timeline for between when you know that you have an incident and when you need to start telling people that you've had an incident. And the SEC now for public companies says, you've got to make a public disclosure within 4 business days. That is almost always still within the incident life cycle. So while you have an intrusion in your system, you need to start thinking about how do we publicly disclose this thing? And that can be really challenging for companies because, by day 4, the only thing you really know is that you have a problem. You may not know who the bad actor is. You may not know how they got in, but you still have to disclose that publicly. And that's really challenging for businesses.
Gotcha. So you really had to have something in place now, not after it happens. So, Josh, let's pivot over and talk about capabilities and services. What unique capabilities and services will our new department have?
Yeah, and it's a great question because I focus on the practical, right? I've throughout my career I've really prided myself on being a harbor pilot, not a traffic cop. And I think a lot of that comes from having been in-house for so long. But there's a lot of in-house lawyers and compliance folks that become traffic cops. They just, red light, green light. They either approve or reject projects. And when you say no enough, when you're in an in-house capacity, the business stops including you in the decision-making process. And so, you stop having a voice at the table, you stop having an opportunity to say no because you've said it so much. And that's, it's just kind of understood. You're the department of no, and no one wants to hear that. So I view myself as a harbor pilot. And what I mean by that is I work closely with the business leaders to understand what their goals are. Where do they want to go? And then I identify the risks and the hazards between here and there, and I help them get to their goals. And maybe the way we get there is not the way they thought we were going to get there, but I get them there. And that results in me really being viewed as a real partner to the business. And I do give this business oriented advice. I'm always keeping in mind the reputation of the company, the customer impact, the employee impact, all those things that are not really legal issues per se, but they're really important issues to the business.
That's so
And
powerful. Yeah,
it-
I'm sorry, but
yeah,
can you talk a bit about a proactive approach to privacy and cybersecurity compliance?
sure. When we're dealing with cybersecurity, I'll give you a little, just a couple of stats here. In 2023, the FBI fielded almost 900,000 cybercrime complaints. There's something like 68%, I think, of U.S. organizations had a ransomware attempt on them. And then, about three-quarters of the ransomware attempts that were attempted in 2023 were targeted against businesses with less than 1,000 employees. And so, the threat is ubiquitous. Everyone is under threat here. And the most startling thing for me, and the reason why I really felt compelled to get out there and help small businesses and mid-sized businesses, is because I realized, or I learned that 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. And that number was just startling to me. Having been a small business owner, I recognize how hard it is to be in business and all the challenges that businesses face. Cyber attack should not be something that you have to worry about, putting you out of business. And it really doesn't have to be that way because being ready pays dividends, right? Being ready helps you get through all of that. The global cost of a cyber attack, it was about, in 2023, I believe, was about $4.5 million. If you are ready for an attack, that global cost goes down by 61%. So if you have an incident response plan, and I use incident response plan and IRP as a proxy for readiness here, because it's more than just having the document. Because having the document doesn't really do a whole lot for you. But if you have the document, you go through the document, you practice the document with the people that are actually going to be handling your response, that will help you reduce the cost of the attack substantially. And that's the simplest thing that any business can do, to get ready for and weather an attack. And I guarantee you that the businesses that implement the incident response plan, they are not spending, the $2 million that they would save in an attack. Like that putting that plan in place is far cheaper than what you're going to experience being in an attack without a plan.
Wow. So what types of industries or businesses are best positioned to leverage your services?
Yeah, I mean, it's really all of them. It's the small and mid-sized businesses, really, regardless of industry. Uh, as I mentioned, almost 900,000 cybercrime complaints filed with the FBI. Everyone is being attacked. Everyone is at risk, and the the experience that I offer is absolutely scalable. A small business can take advantage of doing really comparatively small things that will have an outsized impact on their readiness. And a mid-sized business that maybe has a program in place but needs to take that next step in maturity, I can facilitate that as well. And the mid-sized business going up to the larger business. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time at a multinational, multi-billion dollar organization. So, I understand how it can work in a really well-matured organization, and I understand the little things that small businesses can do to really shore up their defenses.
Thank you. So let's shift gears and talk about your strategy and vision. What is your vision for our department over the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, sure. So immediately it's really just about the proof of value, right? What can I bring to the client base, and I've obviously already done that with my existing clients, and it's really just about showing what I can do, and then in the near term, I'd like to grow the team and really develop that 24/7 incident response capability because it's kind of a joke in the industry, although it's not a joke at all. Attacks happen on nights, weekends, and holidays. That's when everyone is understaffed, and that's when the bad guys know they're going to be able to, get the most bang for their buck. So, that developing that 24/7 capability is really important to me in the near to midterm.
Sounds good. Have you thought about how you can collaborate with my department, employment law and HR, and other practice areas in the firm?
Yeah, I am a real firm believer in teamwork and collaboration, and I am always available to jump in, help out, provide that level of comfort to a business that's uncertain because of an attack or because of some sort of exposure that they've had. So that's one way that I can really jump in and help, and I help the clients get more comfortable with the fact that, a lot of times things seem like a really big deal, but with my experience, maybe they're not such a big deal. Or conversely, people are maybe not taking it seriously, and I can see the danger of not taking it seriously, and I can, ring some alarm bells that way.
I am so excited to bring your value to the clients that I work with. So let's talk about some practical takeaways. What are some common mistakes businesses make when managing cybersecurity and privacy issues?
So the number one thing I think is that a lot of businesses are too quick to outsource. And I think that may sound peculiar coming from outside counsel, but it's true. I think there's a lot of executives and businesses, they are maybe not so familiar with the issues, and they feel like, well, I'm hiring an expert to handle this stuff. But what that really means is that the resolution of the issue is now losing that executive's experience with the business. And every issue, every cyber issue, every privacy issue, the biggest impact is not necessarily the incident itself, it's the business, right? And so the to lose that business acumen in that incident response can be really challenging. And so that's number one. I think, don't outsource the decision making. The best outside resources are going to help a business make good decisions on their own, as opposed to making the decisions for the business. And then, the other thing I'll mention is a misplaced reliance, I think, on cyber insurance. First of all, a lot of cyber insurance policies don't cover what businesses think they cover, so they are in for a surprise there. But also, the cyber insurance, that's after the fact, after the incident, after the issue, after the breach, then you can, make a claim and maybe get some money back, but it doesn't help prepare you. There is kind of a shift in the insurance industry. There's a lot of carriers now that are helping get into that preparation space better. But if you're relying on cyber insurance, that's after the fact, and that's really not terribly useful in terms of avoiding or mitigating an issue right out of the gate.
Got you. So, folks, take out your pen or pencil and write down the response from Josh on the next question. What is one thing clients should prioritize in 2025 to enhance their cybersecurity posture?
So get ready. Just be prepared. It is going to happen. An attack may not happen to you this year, but it will happen. Next year, the year after, it's going to happen to you. So the number one thing I would say is have a plan, an incident response plan, and practice it. Make sure that the people that are going to actually be implementing that plan, make sure they know what their roles are and practice it and practice it and practice it until everyone knows how to handle it. And then when an incident happens, you'll be ready.
Gotcha. I know we only have about 4 or 5 minutes left, but can you share a case study that illustrates the importance of having this strong privacy and cybersecurity measures in place?
Yeah, sure. There's one that really jumps out because we're lazy. Like people are lazy. Humans are a lazy species, and we're always looking for convenience and simplicity. And so, I was supporting a business that was financial services, and all of their advisors had access to a single system to manage all of their customer accounts. And the business realized that there was some anomalous activity in one advisor's accounts, and so they shut that down. Changed the credentials. And a couple days go by, and they see the same sort of activity in a different advisor's account. They do the same thing, shut it down, reset the credentials. And then, they start seeing kind of a cascade of a third advisor, five advisors, a dozen advisors, 20 advisors. All of a sudden, they've got a massive number of advisor accounts that are compromised, and all of their respective customers are now at risk, right? Transactions are being done, account contact information is being changed, banking information is being changed. And what we figured out was that, about 18 months or so prior, the company had implemented a new system, a new portal to access customer accounts. And they moved all of their advisors onto this portal. And when they moved the advisors on, they gave every advisor their first login credentials, and the password was welcome one. And so the system actually did a really great thing, which it forced you to reset your password the first time you log in. But unfortunately, it didn't prevent you from using the exact same password. And what we figured out was that roughly half of the advisors had changed their password to welcome one. And the bad guys figured that out, right? So it didn't take a whole lot for the bad guys to then start testing every other account and trying that one password, and it worked a lot, and they wreaked havoc. And there's really just two simple things that would have prevented that whole problem. One is the technical solution of preventing someone from using a password they've already used. But then there's also just kind of the human nature solution of don't reuse your passwords, right? If you use it once, it's gone, it's disposable. Never use that again.
So true, so very true. So we're in the lightning round and a bit of personal touch. What do you enjoy most about your work in the field?
The technology is fascinating, but what I really love is working with the people, and what I absolutely have enjoyed for my entire career is stopping the bad guys. I say it all the time, and I get kind of a chuckle out of this idea, but fraud is fun. I really love fighting fraud and pulling those threads and investigating and figuring out what happened and why it happened and how we can stop it next time.
Oh, I love it. Let's shift over to the closing now. And what would you recommend as a first step for a client looking to strengthen their cybersecurity and privacy practice?
And so the first step is understand what data you have, who has access to it, where it is, what it consists of. Is it personal information? Is it sensitive information? Is it protected health information? Is it reproductive health care information? And then once you understand what you have and where it is, start thinking about the threat landscape out there, right? What are the different bad actors doing right now? What are the trends in the threat landscape? And then trying to figure out, all right, I understand what I have. I understand what my risk profile is. I understand what the threat landscape is. And then try to marry those two to understand what your actual risk is to your organization. Because not all threats are created equal, right? North Korea is not going to go after everyone. China is not going to go after everyone. A cyber criminal sitting in Russia is not going to go after everyone. They have particular targets in mind. So, who are you really at risk of being attacked by? And then, taking that understanding and applying some targeted threat mitigation so that you can, take really simple, effective steps to mitigate a lot of the risk that you have as an organization. Because generally, the bad guys are looking for targets of opportunity. And so if you just make yourself a harder target, you will not be subject to quite so much threat. And that's really what it is. It's just making yourself a less attractive target so that they move on to somebody else.
That's great advice. So, Josh, how can people reach out to you, whether they want to have a consultation, they want to retain you? Um, Talk about how you prefer to be reached by people.
Yeah, I'm always out there. So you can reach me by email, you can reach me through the firm, by phone. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible, and I'm always happy to talk 24 hours a day. If you've got an issue, let's talk it through. And if there's any way I can help you, I'm happy to help. My overarching goal is to help my clients achieve resilience, because that's really the bottom line here is, you're going to get knocked around by a cyber attack, by a privacy incident. It's going to knock you down, but getting back up is really what it's all about. So achieving that resilience to be able to, to take that hit and just keep on plugging away and get back to business, that's what it's all about.
Having gotten to know you a bit over the last few months, I'm thrilled that you're part of the team and can't wait to see the impact that you've got for the clients. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.